Hello, I'm Natalie from the Early Years Alliance, and today I'm here to share with you some play ideas that are suitable for babies from birth to around 3 months, although a lot of them will extend beyond that. And they are play activities which will support your baby's communication and their social and emotional development. Babies are attracted to and want to make sense of facial expressions, and within minutes they show a preference for looking at faces opposed to any objects. So that's where their preference will be. And that's mainly going to be the faces of their main caregivers. And they will study faces quite intently, and they're able to copy simple facial expressions and actions quite quickly. Babies use their eyes as part of their non-verbal communication. And when they do this, this really underpins their development of relationships, that bonding and attachment, as well as developing their language skills. So it's really important that we have positive interactions which centre around this to support those areas of development. Now, babies use their eyes in a number of different ways. And it kind of starts at around 2 to 3 weeks of age, where they will start to make eye contact, so mutual eye contact, where they are staring into the eyes of that main caregiver. And this is really important because when that takes place, that mutual eye contact, it helps to develop secure attachment. It makes the baby feel really safe, and it helps them to bond with that caregiver. And it's also really supportive for the health and well-being of the caregiver as well, for the adult, because that bonding process is a two-way process. And by having lots of opportunities to have that mutual eye contact, that's going to be really supportive of that process. Once they've established that, they'll start to move on to using that non-verbal communication with their eyes in different ways. So the next thing that will start to emerge is that the baby will have a shared eye gaze. And what that means is that when you're looking at your baby and you've got that mutual eye contact, and then you look away to look at something else, to focus on an object in the room, your baby will start to copy your gaze, and they will follow your eye gaze, and they will look in the direction that you are looking in. So they are recognising that you are looking somewhere else, and they are imitating that. And then the next stage in that is joint attention. So where you and your baby are sharing an experience by looking at the same object. And when they're doing this, they might shift between looking at you and looking at the object, and they might go back and forth, and that's part of them making sense of that world around them. So as their eyesight develops and they're able to see to a greater distance, and they start to see in colour as opposed to just in black and white, that light and shade that is part of their initial eyesight, they'll start to develop these skills. And although this is part of their physical development in terms of what they are able to see around them, it's all really important in terms of that language and communication development and developing those relationships and understanding that world around them in a broader sense. So I'm just going to share with you a few ideas of how you can play with your baby, a few resources that you can use to support all of those things. So to start with, I want us to think about that mutual eye contact, where you're looking right into your baby's eyes and they're looking back at you. And one of the things that we can do in our play with our baby as part of that is some singing, and we can sing some face-to-face songs with our babies. Now, I've already mentioned that babies very quickly are able to copy facial expressions and actions. So if we can sing songs to our babies that use lots of those quite exaggerated facial expressions, that's going to give them lots of opportunities to do that. So one of the songs that we could sing with them would be The Little Green Frog. And it goes like this. When the little green frog one day, when the little green frog, when the little green frog one day, when the little green frog. But we know frogs go tra-la-la-la-la, tra-la-la-la-la, tra-la-la-la-la. We know frogs go tra-la-la-la-la, they don't go So as you can see, I'm using quite exaggerated movements and facial expressions there. And very quickly, you'd be really surprised at how young a baby can be when they've had that song repeated to them lots and lots, and they start to imitate that, actually using their tongue. And this is really great for building those muscles in their mouths and their tongue that they're later going to need for that speech development. We're making lots of eye contact with the baby throughout that, lots of smiling, because when babies see our facial expressions, that's how they understand how we feel about them. And that's going to make them feel really safe and secure. And as we know, when babies are calm and feel safe and secure, that's when their development is at its utmost and they do their best learning. We want to make them feel safe and secure as much as we can. So we can sing lots of face-to-face songs with our babies. That's really going to help that. Now, there are lots of versions of that song and different verses. And if you have a look on YouTube and put in the Little Green Frog song, you'll find lots of different verses that you could try with your baby. The next thing that we can do as part of our face-to-face and making that mutual eye contact is we can introduce some voyal scarves. Now, these are really lovely for baby to look at and to focus on, just thinking about the texture. They could be on their back or on your raised lap or in your arms, and you can be showing them this scarf. They will start, as that development comes, they'll start to reach out and grab for this as well, but initially they'll just be watching the movements. And we can incorporate into that some positive interactions when we use this scarf, because remember, the adult in the room is the greatest resource that your child is ever going to have. You are the greatest source of their play. We can just use these little things to aid that as well. So we could do some peek-a-boo, peek-a-boo. And again, using those really exaggerated facial expressions, because they're going to get that feedback from that, and it's going to give them something to imitate and practice and try to make those expressions themselves. You can sing your songs using your voyal scarves as well. So any of the usual songs that you sing, you can incorporate that voyal scarf into that song. And it just gives baby something else, that extra sensory stimulation, and remembering that when we interact with our baby and they use multiple senses in that play, then that is all aiding to build those neural pathways and building that brain connection there, that's going to help them with their later learning. The more pathways we can create, the better learners they will be at a later stage. So we can incorporate some voyal scarves into our play with our babies. We can also use things like simple puppets. So we could do a little bit of storytelling with baby, or even just, using a puppet and letting the baby look at the movements. We can moo, moo, the cow, moo, the cow's mooing. And it's never too early to start to introduce these things to a baby. From birth, we can be using these tools and we can be using that vocabulary with them, because although they're not going to be able to copy that speech at the moment, this is all the foundation that they're going to need for that later language and communication development. It's all about repetition and that immersion in language. So the more that we can introduce them to these things right from the start, the better. The cow puppet's a lovely one in terms of it, like I've mentioned, the black and white, because the newborn baby is going to be able to see this really well. They're going to see the contrast. If we hold that nice and closely for them, alongside our own face, so they're getting that reassurance that you are there too. And we can have a little bit of interaction with baby just for a minute. It just gives something else for them to focus on, and we can keep having that eye contact with baby. And what you'll start to get is that shared gaze. You look from baby to your props. Baby's going to start to follow that gaze. So if I had baby in my arms and I'd be talking to baby, can you see the cow? Moo. Look at the cow's face. And I'm talking to the baby, but I'm also looking at the resource that I have in my hand, because baby's going to then start to follow my gaze. We're going to have that shared gaze, and then we're going to have that joint attention. We are interacting by sharing an experience, which is looking at the puppet. We can do a very similar thing in terms of reading stories to newborn babies. So we can have the book, and again, they could be in my arms, or a really nice way to introduce books to babies is actually when they're laid on their back and actually coming from above and talking to the baby about what they can see. So we could say, ooh, here's the tiger, peekaboo, peekaboo. With a newborn baby, with a very young baby, that sort of birth to 3 month stage, don't be afraid of using books that actually have a few more words in there as well as the pictures, because you don't need to be reading every word that's on there. We can just be interacting with the image there with baby, and we can be talking through that. You don't need to actually be reading the words to be using the book. You can just use it as a visual resource with the baby initially as well, or you can actually read the story to them as a nice calming experience. And again, it's a really lovely way to have that interaction, because you can be looking at your baby and you can be making that eye contact as you're reading that story to them, showing them those images and sharing that experience. So it's really important positive interaction. Thinking about babies really loving faces. Babies love faces of babies as well. They're really interested in their own faces. So baby safe mirrors are absolutely great for positioning and letting baby look at their own face. If we've got baby in our arms, we can be looking at baby. Who's in the mirror? Can you see in the mirror? Can you see? And looking, and again, we're going to get that shared gaze. We're going to get baby looking at this image that you're looking at too, and having that interaction. And they're going to love that, because they're getting even more experience of looking at faces by looking at their own faces. So they've got their own facial expressions to look at and start to interpret and make sense of what's going on there. Homemade shakers are a really lovely way to play with your baby. You can make these larger ones. These are quite nice for when you're having tummy time. It's something that you could pop in front of your baby and kind of roll back and forth. This one I've just got some rice and some sequins in there. Old recycled bottle. Really important thing is to make sure that they are really securely sealed. I've actually super glued the lids onto these ones. And as an extra safety measure, pop some tape around the top. So there's no way that they can open that up and get into these items inside, because these would be a choking risk. But when we've got them safely and securely sealed inside the bottle, it actually becomes a really safe play resource. So we'll be rolling them back and forth. That's going to encourage your baby to reach. They're getting the extra sensory element there again. Play that engages more than one sense, so they can hear what's happening inside the bottle. It's a really lovely tummy time activity. But we can also have baby in our arms or seated on our lap looking back towards us. And we can shake and rattle, and the reflection there is going to engage the baby. I've got one here that's got dried pasta and some beads inside. So different sounds. So it's like these are their own homemade instruments, and we can engage them in different sounds there. Some lovely small ones that as they start to be able to grab and hold on to things, bottles that are more of the size that they could hold on to are really lovely, because they can use them as sort of little rattles and shakers. That one's just got some feathers inside. So again, just something for the baby to look at that we can just hold up for them and kind of show them and talk to them about. And again, we're having that joint attention, that shared gaze there of looking at something together. The little bottles that kind of food colouring, or I had some like vanilla extract in them. These are fantastic to save because they're so small. So again, make sure you're securing the caps. I've just got some rice in that one, which makes a really lovely lightweight shaker that a baby could hold on to. And just some water and glitter in there for, again, a different sensory experience. And even quite a small baby, once they've got that ability to reach out and grab and hold, that one would be a lovely size for them to look at. And we can talk to them about what's going on there and the colours, and we can just let them have a little explore. As another tummy time activity, you could have your semicircle of different sensory bottles with baby laid on their tummy on a soft surface on the ground. These around them, and it's just going to encourage them to lift their head, strengthen their neck muscles and their core muscles whilst they have a look at what's in front of them. And then as that development comes, they can reach out and they can start to try and grab for these objects as well. And that's going to really engage them in their tummy time and prolong that for the benefits of their physical development, keeping them in that position and giving them the opportunities to have that time in their tummies. You might also find that if your baby's on their back and you're interacting with these sorts of objects, that they will often engage with their feet as well as their hands. So they will start to bring their feet up and tap the objects, which again is fantastic for them learning to control their muscles as they get a little bit more strength in their legs and their arms. So sensory bottles, really easy to make at home from recycled materials and things that you just have around the house. Build up your collection with a little selection. This is going to be your baby's toolbox and toy kit. So these are the sorts of things that you can have at home to engage your baby in play. If you would like any more ideas for things that you can do with your baby at home, then you can go to www.familycorner.co.uk, or you can head across to the Early Years Alliance YouTube channel for lots more videos which will share tips and ideas that you can support your baby at home with their learning and development.